Hello and welcome to this final lesson for higher tier GCSE on further quadratic factorisation. The first thing you need to do is complete this do now task. So write down the quadratic expression and factorise them. Pause the video while you work through this. Okay, let's check the answers. Just a reminder that the order of the brackets doesn't matter since multiplication is commutative. So question A could be written as x plus 3, x plus 2 instead. Pause the video while you mark your answers. Okay, so today we are doing the final topic of factorising quadratics. That is where we have a coefficient of x squared that is not a unit. So we write this as ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to factorise quadratics of this format into two linear brackets. So here is an example. There are two methods. We will mostly focus on this first method though. So copy down the example. We are going to factorise 2x squared plus 11x plus 15. Now, we want the sum to be 11, like before, but the difference here is because the coefficient of x squared is not 1, our product is going to not just be 15, but 2 times 15, which is 30. So we need two numbers that have a product of 30 and a sum of 11. So that is going to be 6 and 5. We're going to do what we call splitting the middle term. So that 11x is going to become 6x plus 5x from those two values that we just worked out. We're now going to factorise each half. So if you put a dotted line down the middle, note that it's to the left of the plus sign and not over the top. It's important that we keep the plus sign separate. So just looking at the left-hand side of that dotted line, we are going to factorise. So the common factor there is 2x. So we have 2x and then bracket x plus 3. If we now look at the right-hand side, the common factor there is 5. So we'll have 5 brackets x plus 3. Now this may seem a little bit familiar if you use the expansion method when expanding brackets. So what we're going to do is the reverse of that. Now you should notice that you've got two brackets the same. That should be there. If they're not the same, you've made a mistake somewhere. So just check really carefully. So the reverse of the expansion method, that means 2x plus 5 is going to become one bracket, and we've got x plus 3 as our other bracket. That is your final answer. 2x plus 5, x plus 3. You don't have to draw those arrows in as part of your working. I've just put those on the screen so you can see where our brackets have come from. Okay, let's copy down a second example. We're going to factorise, this time, 5x squared, take away 33x, take away 14. So the sum is going to be negative 33. And the product is going to be whatever the product of 5 multiplied by negative 14 is. So that is negative 70. Since our product is negative, we are looking for one positive and one negative value. So we want a product of negative 70 and a sum of negative 33. We end up with negative 35 and plus 2. So we're going to split that middle term. We're going to replace the negative 33x with negative 35x plus 2x. That's come from those values we've just worked out. Drawing our dotted line down at the middle, remember to keep it to the side of the plus and not over the top. So factorise the left side, we're going to have 5x as your common factor. Factorising the right side, you've got 2 as your common factor. Notice that we have the same bracket, which is what we should have. So the reverse of the expansion method, we've got 5x plus 2 to give us one bracket, and x take away 7 as our other bracket. I've got a third example for you. If you feel confident with this, pause the video and have a go at it before I go through this. Okay, so copy this down if you haven't already had a go at it. So what we need is a sum of negative 11 and a product of 18. Now, since our product is positive and our sum is negative, that tells us we're going to have two negative values. we're going to have negative 9 and negative 2. So let's split the middle term. So negative 11x becomes negative 9x take away 2x. Now, it doesn't actually matter which way you do these. If you'd done negative 2x take away 9x, that will still work the same. The answer at the end will be the same. Okay, so let's split it down the middle with our dotted line and factorise each half. The left half is going to become 3x as our common factor, with 2x take away 3. Now, we will notice the right half doesn't have a common factor, but it looks a bit like the bracket that we've got from the left-hand side, except the signs are different. So what we're going to do is factorise out negative 1, and therefore the bracket will end up being the same. So using the reverse of the expansion method, our first bracket is going to be 3x take away 1, and our second bracket is going to be 2x take away 3. Right, I'm going to talk through this second method. Now, this can be much more efficient, but if the numbers are a bit more tricky, it can be a lot more complicated and take a long time. So most of you probably won't use this method, but some of you may find that you can just spot those values nice and quickly. So for this example, what we notice is that both signs are positive, therefore in the brackets, both values are going to be positive. But this time, the coefficient of x squared is 3. So we need two values that multiply together to make 3x squared. Well, that's going to be 3x and x. So those are the values in the brackets. Now, we have factors of 4 are either 4 and 1 or 2 and 2. So it's finding which combination will give us 8. And 8 comes from this 8x as our middle term here. So we can see that the combination 3 times 2 and 1 times 2 gives us 8. So our brackets will be 3x add 2 and x add 2. A second example with this method. Now, this time both signs are negative, which means one of our values in the bracket is going to be positive, one is negative. So that already makes this slightly more tricky. 6 is not a prime number. It has two pairs of factors. So we have in our brackets either 6x plus or minus something and x plus or minus something, or we have 3x plus or minus something and 2x plus or minus something. Now we don't know which way round that plus and that minus go either. So we've got so many combinations that we can try already. Now we're looking at the factors of 10. Thankfully 10 only has two pairs of factors, so it's not as tricky as it could be. But we've got 5 and 2 or 1 and 10. Now it's which combination of the factors of 6 and the factors of 10 will give us negative 7. Now it could take a while to try all of these until you get the correct one. But if you can spot it quickly, you may see that 6 times negative 2 and 1 times 5 will give us that negative 7. Remember that negative 7 comes from here, that middle term in the question, that negative 7x. So the factorisation becomes 6x plus 5 and x take away 2. Now I recommend that most of you stick with the first method, but some of you may find that you can do this quite quickly if your brain works in that way. So it's absolutely fine for you to do this method. So, as I said, I recommend using the first method, but it's entirely your choice. Write down the question, show you're working, and write down the answer. Pause the video while you work through these questions. Right, let's check those. Mark your work and pause the video while you do that. Okay, we're going to have some quickfire questions again. The working does take a while if you're not used to this yet, so you may need to pause the video while you practice these. Okay, so the first one with the answer. Here is question 2 and its answer. Question 3 and the answer. Question 4 and the answer. Question 5 and its answer. Question 6 and the answer. Question 7 and the answer. Question 8. Hopefully you've spotted this as a difference of two squares and been able to do it a little bit more efficiently. So here's the answer. So now we're going to have a look at a little bit of problem solving with this. So it says use the factorisation of 2x squared take away 17x plus 35 to find the value when x is 15. Now our first instinct might just be to substitute x into that, but that could be more tricky. And it also does say use the factorisation. So if you're told to use the factorisation, you must use the method you are told to follow. So let's factorise this. So the sum has to be negative 17 and the product is going to be 70. That's fairly straightforward. So our two numbers have a product of 70 and a sum of negative 17. That is going to be negative 7 and negative 10. Splitting the middle term and then put your dotted line down the middle. Factorise each half. So that first half, the only common term is x. And the right hand side, don't just factorise out the 5. Remember, we want the brackets to be the same. So factorise out the negative 5. And then we get our two brackets, 2x take away 7 and x take away 5. Now we mustn't forget what the question is actually asking. It wasn't just to factorise this. We had to find the value when x is 15. So we're going to substitute x equals 15 into those brackets. And we end up with 23 times 10, which is 230. Here are some slightly more challenging questions for you to have a go at. Pause the video while you work through them. And now here are your gold level questions. Okay, here are the answers. Mark your work, pause the video if you need to do that while marking. Right, well done. We have finished our topic on further quadratic factorisation, which means we have now almost finished this chapter. We have done everything except rearranging simple formulae, which is what we will do next time. So see you in the next video for rearranging simple formulae. Goodbye.